anything less than a decision by the Supreme Court that says a president should be held to the laws just like any other American citizen should be. Anything other than that is absurd. The notion, for instance, that apparently some justices are fooling around with it. Well, if the president violated the criminal law but was doing so in his official capacity, there may be some basis to say that that's okay. We need to step back and think about that. Wait a minute. A president can violate the American criminal law if he or she is doing something in their official capacity. That is an absurd and dangerous conclusion. And I'm worried, given the length of time that it has taken for the Supreme Court to decide this case, that something along those lines might come out of the Supreme Court.
What's the debate? I have to ask former Attorney General Eric Holder on MSNBC yesterday as we continue to await the Supreme Court's decision on Donald Trump's presidential immunity claim. The court heard oral arguments on April 25th, and a decision is expected before the end of the month. Another set of decisions is expected to be released this morning at 10 a.m. Joining us now, former litigator and MSNBC legal correspondent Lisa Rubin and state attorney for Palm Beach County, Dave Aronberg, joins us as well. Lisa, I'll start with you. Am I being too simplistic? What would the debate be happening inside the Supreme Court about presidential immunity? And these delays are conscious, are they not?
They're certainly conscious, Mika, on behalf of at least some of the justices, particularly given their decision to schedule briefing in the way that they did. Before the break, John and I were talking about this schedule, and I was saying the delay itself is the win. Even if we see a decision, let's say tomorrow or Friday, that is a full victory for Jack Smith and his team, the damage will have largely been done. It's not clear whether the case can be tried in the time remaining before the election or whether Judge Tanya Chutkan has the will to impose a trial on that schedule. You'll hear people complain bitterly, for example, that the Department of Justice policy forbids taking certain steps, certain number of days before election, whether 60 to 90 days. Read very clearly, that policy is about overt investigative steps like subpoenas or search warrants. It's not about a trial. But nonetheless, even if the Supreme Court were to hand Jack Smith a full victory, it's not clear that trial can be accomplished or if there is the will to make it happen.
Dave Aronberg, same question. What's the holdup?
A cynical person, Mika, would say the Supreme Court is putting its thumb on the scale of justice here, refusing to hold Donald Trump accountable for his actions. Remember, they could have intervened in December. Jack Smith saw this possibility and went to the Supreme Court and said, hey, why don't you come in now before the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals rules, and let's get this out of the way. And the Supreme Court said, no, that's too early. Well, then, after the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals issued a very thorough, very powerful ruling, the Supreme Court intervened anyways, and that's why so many of us are just so upset about what happened, because the Supreme Court's supposed to be apolitical. This does not look apolitical. And yes, it looks like that Trump will not get absolute immunity, but he wins by losing, as Lisa said, by delaying this matter, by delaying the trial until after the election when he can become president and then call it all off. I do think it is likely, though, that the Supreme Court will issue a ruling that will send the case back to Judge Chutkan for some fact-finding to determine whether Trump's conduct falls within his duties of office and whether there's immunity. And so that'll mean that there is no trial before the election. But Judge Chutkan, who is motivated to get this thing going, who said she will cancel her vacation if necessary, could hold this public hearing where a lot of the evidence will come out into the public of Trump's involvement in and before January 6th. So Jack Smith could get a bit of a victory even if he loses.
So, Lisa, the delay, as discussed, all but ensures that this trial won't happen before the election. But Dave just started to mention one of the outcomes here, that maybe it would be kicked back down. What are some of the other possible rulings the Supreme Court could provide?
Well, you could see, as I just postulated earlier, a complete victory for Jack Smith, saying that historically the Supreme Court has never found immunity for a president, and it's not going to start now. There's another possibility that it says immunity could theoretically be possible in certain circumstances, but on the allegations of this indictment, that's not the case. And the third possibility, John, is somewhere in between what Dave just said and a complete loss for the special counsel's office, which says, no, a president can be immune, and on the allegations of this indictment, they think that this would qualify for immunity. But, for example, it would not stop prosecutors from introducing certain evidence, for example, with respect to presidential conduct, even if certain of the conduct is itself immune from prosecution.
So, Ed Luce, this is the latest challenge to the Supreme Court's, frankly, credibility. We're about at the 2-year anniversary of the Dobbs decision. But more than that, in recent weeks, there's been all kinds of questions about the personal behavior of some of the justices, whether that's Clarence Thomas accepting gifts, the role that his wife played in efforts to overturn the election, Samuel Alito and his wife, and upside-down flags. And now we have a moment where almost no matter the ruling, the delay in getting to the ruling seems to be hyper beneficial to Trump and therefore political. Is there any coming back from the court?
I find it very hard to see how. I mean, as you say, and as I think Lisa and David have also implied, the real decision, their real ruling has already been taken, and that is time. Now, whatever they decide this afternoon or next week, specifically about the contours of immunity and whether you need Judge Chutkan to do fact-checking, is secondary to the fact that this has taken twice as long so far, 110 days, since Jack Smith asked for their opinion, as it took the Supreme Court to hear and rule on the secret tapes that Nixon was then ordered to release in 1974. This is a foot-dragging operation. We've got other rulings coming up, none as important as that, but you've got, I think, credibility issues with two Supreme Court justices at the moment, with Clarence Thomas in terms of corruption and with Sam Alito in terms of bias and not recusing himself. But we've got one coming up, just to mention this, where it's conceivable they will rule that that people with domestic restraining orders have a constitutional right to firearms. So there are right. choices with this Supreme Court when you say, has it gone too far?
Right, that's a great point.